How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Planet of the Apes, the original film from 1968. This is directed by Franklin J. Schaffner and stars Charlton Heston, Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter, and Linda Harrison. This is based on a book of the same name by Pierre Boulle, but the screenplay is written by Michael Wilson and the Twilight Zone's own Rod Serling. So cool to see him writing the story, and that's why this has such a gut punch of an end. And I guess I should talk about that. I won't spoil it, but that being said, I'd honestly be surprised if there was anyone that wasn't already spoiled. I picked this DVD. I do have another copy of the DVD up here on my shelf, but that one, as well as like most of the other releases of this movie, just has a big spoiler image right there on the front. And the iconic ending shot of Planet of the Apes has become so iconic and so well spread that it's hard to avoid it. When I was a kid, I didn't even know that that was supposed to be a spoiler image. I just saw it all over the place. I thought it was one of the movie's, things that you knew pretty early on. But no, the ending of this movie is super, super spoiled. And on top of that, with the prequel movies coming out and just seeing trailers for those, you can basically tell what the twist is of this movie. And I won't personally say it myself in this review. I will say it's an iconic gut punch and a great ending. But if by some miracle you or someone you know doesn't know the ending of Planet of the Apes, go and watch it right now because the clock is ticking. Anyway, another thing I do want to say looking at this DVD that is pretty funny, it's rated G. Boy, was a 1968 G much more hardcore than a modern day G. Back in the day, a rated G movie, you could apparently say, "Damn dirty apes," and show a surprising amount of Charlton Heston's butt. Like, nowadays, G and PG are basically derivative ratings, and any little tiny bit of anything will get you a rated R. I need to make a whole separate video about this, but the rating system is in desperate need of calibration. But this is always one of my fun facts, is original Planet of the Apes, rated G. Anyway, I guess I should say that this movie has a different feel than a lot of people give it credit for. A lot of people think, oh, old Planet of the Apes, people running around in ape mask, goofy old school science fiction. But that's really not what this movie is at all. It's actually very serious and has a very grungy atmosphere. And there's a super big layer of hopelessness and oppression that comes out with this movie. Like, the beginning section of this movie is just so bleak and so dark. It is actually quite shocking to go back and revisit it. There's that, but there's also the way it handles science fiction. Trying not to sound too much like a grumpy old person, but so much science fiction nowadays is just about lasers and backflips and doing a whole bunch of special effects. The special effects in this movie are by no means advanced, but it's so much better than a lot of the stuff nowadays because the science fiction is a setting to, criticize culture. It's an abstract lens that we can look through back at ourselves and honestly talk about something in a deep and important way, which I feel is super lost. And if anyone tries to do it nowadays, half the time they just knock off Blade Runner and say, "When do robots become human?" Even though that's not the point of Blade Runner. The point of Blade Runner is, why must I die? But anyway, it's good to see the old school well thought out sci-fi. It's cool to see such a bleak and grungy atmosphere and such a weird and different story, you know? I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man here, but they really don't make them like they used to. Planet of the Apes is definitely a classic, and I definitely would recommend watching it, especially if you haven't seen the original and just saw the new movies. I actually talked to someone about this movie after I watched it, and she didn't know there was an original in the 60s and thought it was just the dawn of the Planet of the Apes movies, and oh man, that was... Anyway, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and take that as an excuse to analyze some of the movie. I won't be doing any major spoilers, but let's talk about the plot. We open up in a spaceship, and okay, it is a bit of a 1960s spaceship. The setting is a little campy, but don't worry, we aren't in this set for long. But we get Charlton Heston as the captain, and he's saying that they're going on this deep space mission, and they'll be back to Earth 700 years after they left, because they can't go faster than the speed of light, so they're going in cryosleep for 700 years, and everyone they know will be dead when they come back. Right off the bat, when things are going like they're supposed to, it starts off on a very bleak note. But then, after they wake up from cryosleep, it turns out more time has passed than it should, closer to 2,000 years. So when they crash land on this planet, they have to assume that they missed Earth and have just shot through space to a planet that's 1,300 light years from home, plus you're in a violent crash, and now you don't have a spaceship. So, you know, you're stuck on this planet, no hope of ever getting home, but almost 3 times the amount of time has passed. You know, you already expected to be gone for 700 years, now it's close to 2,000. You know, everyone you know, definitely dead. But is human culture, what is that like now? So it is dark and gloomy, and like, it was 3 guys and a woman, and the woman actually died because of an air leak in cryosleep, and now it's just the 3 guys, and Charlton Heston will later talk about in the movie, if she had survived, she would have had to have been like the new Eve, you know, 1 girl and 3 guys, and Charlton Heston will say, it was probably better for her that she died, which is a super dark thought there. So yeah, very, very bleak. Even if they manage to survive, the human race is going to die with them on this planet. And there's one shot in the movie, you know, like the ending shot is so iconic, the damn dirty apes line is so iconic, but one absolutely beautiful shot that I wish more people would talk about, they're wandering through the desert, and they think there might not be any life on this planet at all, and they see one little weed, and all 3 of the guys run to it, pull it out of the dirt, and just hold it in their hands, just absolutely amazed, because you went from bleak to not being in a great situation, but just one little weed being the first sign that there's life on this planet, and just the fact that they're just shaken to their core to see a weed. You know, I do love just how absolutely ridiculously bleak this movie starts out at, and I don't think people remember how bleak it actually is. But yeah, there's life on this planet, and it turns out there is a race of humanoids. They look just like the crew from Earth. However, they are at about caveman level technology. Nothing super advanced, and they don't appear to talk at all. They're all mute. And again, not the best situation, but Charlton Heston's like, hey, there are at least other people here, and we have the most knowledge, so we'll probably be running this place in a couple months. But no, there is someone with more knowledge than them, and that would be the titular apes. The apes show up in a hunting party, scoop them all up, and Charlton Heston winds up in essentially an animal laboratory, and that's where we find out about the apes and their culture. The apes are the dominant species on this planet. They can talk, they have advanced technology, they still don't have things like flight, but they're leaps and bounds ahead of the humans. So the apes are dominant here, and they think of humans like we do animals, you know? They don't expect them to talk, they don't expect them to have any intelligence, and they're just studied in laboratories. Now, Charlton Heston's throat was messed up when he got captured, so he can't simply talk, and a lot of the early parts of this movie is him and this nice scientist ape who she's really trying to do her job and study and figure things out, and he's trying to convince her that he's not like the other humans and that he can actually speak and knows things. And a lot of that is trying to be uncovered and trying to show the world that you're, essentially you can speak and that you shouldn't be treated like an animal, and just saying, this is my being and I'm worth it. There's a lot to unpack here. But of course there is an antagonizing force. There is this scientist of a higher order, and he represses this idea. He says there's no way a human can talk, it's just mimicking you, or you did some sort of experiment, and he'll be holding this research down and suppressing it. And while you don't really think of it, Planet of the Apes is essentially a government conspiracy movie. They talk about the Forbidden Zone and how you're never allowed to go out there, and the government seems to be oppressing any idea that humans can be intelligent. So what's really going on there? But you get him trying to prove it, you get him trying to step up, trying to say, my life matters, and being oppressed by this force. And it really is a really interesting idea, is saying things like a human is just an animal. Does he have a soul? He's not born an ape. What rights does he have on our planet? There's some interesting ideas about the nature of humanity and sentience here. But of course, what a lot of this movie talks about, it's a pretty thinly veiled metaphor for religious extremists of the 1960s, which, the thing is, the movie, it still speaks important stuff, even though these extremists aren't super popular these days. I mean, I'm in Texas right now filming this. I grew up there all my life, and yes, there are, religious folks everywhere, but I still, in my whole life, I don't think I've ever met anyone that legitimately thinks dinosaur bones were planted in the dirt as a trick by the devil or anything. So the group that this movie criticizes isn't really in power anymore, but human nature is still human nature. And while this movie, people talk about the open criticism of religion, it really also has a lot of criticism towards scientists. Scientists worry more about their reputation than they do about actual science. If I study this, or if I publish my results that are contrary to popular opinion, will I be ridiculed? And the idea that there are scientific notions that are not allowed to be questioned, that's super important. Each and every aspect of science, no matter how much we think is a given certainty, must constantly be poked and prodded and tested, and nothing should be against being tested. I mean, as long as we're going about it scientifically, everything must constantly be questioned, because the moment science isn't allowed to be questioned is the moment when it stops becoming science and starts becoming a cult. And the way that any human research in this movie, beyond what is accepted, is constantly pushed down, constantly oppressed, and it's a government cover-up. So I do feel that, even though the culture that this movie critiqued has changed, the idea of how science is treated and people worrying more about their reputation, so much of that is still super, super relevant, and I do want to stress that as well. But yeah, there is things like chases and gunfights, and there's some exciting moments in this movie. They come about naturally, though, and like I said, and again, I don't want to sound like a cranky old man, but so much of modern sci-fi is just mindless CGI spectacle that, again, even though the special effects in this movie aren't, mind-blowing, so much of it really does work because it's a good, well-written story with good pacing and moments and character beats. And yeah, it comes off really, really well. Deep, hard-hitting moments, especially towards the end, which, of course, is spoiled for everyone, and I don't know if it will ever have that impact again, but I really do like this, and I feel like if you do get serious sci-fi movies nowadays, they would never have the gall to put a bunch of extras and monkey masks, so it kind of is a unique time capsule, and I don't know if we'll ever get a movie like this again, but definitely a classic, definitely worth checking out, definitely would recommend it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my sci-fi movies playlist. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.